Am I live? Am I live? I don't know why this is so frustrating to get this going. I think it's actually working. It's act all right, sweet. So we're good, right? Somebody acknowledge, please God. All right, we're live. Let's go, gang. Let's go. All right, hold on. I got a little housekeeping to do here. I was scrambling. All right. Do we have it? We have it. All right. Let's go. Okay. Welcome to the PageMotor live stream. This is week 2. I'm your host, Chris Pearson. You guys all know me. I see who's in here. It's the peeps, the beta peeps. All right. So I've been working all week on getting user management into PageMotor. And this has been a much bigger pain in the butt than I anticipated. So I'm on day 5 of that. It's pretty much done, but there's some little stuff, some housekeeping stuff that I still got to take care of. But I'll show you a little bit of that during the live stream today. And so because of that, because I've been in the lab all week, I have not had as much of a chance to survey the plugin development landscape. Not as much as I would like. I'd love to be spending all my time doing that and fiddling with AI right now. But we still got the core platform to build. But with that said, there's still been some very interesting activity this week. Very interesting stuff, specifically about having a JSON object representation for a PageMotor plugin that we feed into LLMs. So we'll go into that a little bit later. I think this is really interesting. That's an idea from David in the forums. It's a great idea. It will help sort of normalize the production landscape when we use AIs to build plugins. So I'm excited about that. Another thing, so the theme this week that's just kind of come into being for me is this idea of AI-driven design. And so we're going to be spending a lot of time today talking about AI-driven design, what that means, what the implications are, what big companies are doing, where people are looking here, that whole thing. So I think, so the theme today is kind of more design-based, but it's design systems. So not just, colors and fonts and stuff like that. Nothing like that. It's design systems and what that all means. So before we do that, though, let's take a look at the updates for PageMotor this week. So I'm going to flip over and show you what I did. So let's see. We're going to go here. And all right. So we are now seeing my little test site here. We're going to go to the admin. Here we are in the admin. You'll notice a new module in the admin called users. And you can click on this to manage your users. And this is going to look familiar. This is a similar interface to the content management interface. And so basically you got some users and you can create a new user up here. We can edit existing users and it all just works. It's great. There's a lot of nuance to user management, and I've gotten to go through all that this week. A lot more than I ever cared to, but it's all here. It's finally working. This is great. And you can view users by type, which is really cool. So previously I had designed 4 basic user types for PageMotor. As I went through this process, I realized there should only be 3. The 3 types are administrator. You could think of administrator as like the super admin or the God user for your site. You can have multiples, but say be careful there. The other one we have is producer and then user. So here's the distinction between these, at least as they're built into the architecture right now. Administrator obviously has access to everything and can do everything. Administrator has total control and total access and can get to all the functions within PageMotor. A producer, though, is somebody who also can access the admin. They can access the admin, but the specific design here is to have permissions for producers within the admin. And so you can set somebody up as a producer. For now, all you can do is set them as a producer. It doesn't actually do anything. They can still get admin access and sort of behave like an admin user. There's a couple things they can't do. But the idea is that you will supply permissions for producers And these permissions will be echoed throughout the PageMotor admin. And so certain things will be allowed. Like you could say they have permission to access the theme editor, for example. So like if you're going to have somebody working on your site, it would make sense that they can access the theme editor and all the theme functions. So like something like this. They could click on theme settings here and then go in and do anything for your theme. If they're doing work for you, they're going to need to access all that stuff. Potentially, they could have access to content. If that producer is a writer, you obviously want them to have access to content. But if they are just a writer, maybe you want them to have access to content, but not necessarily to theme settings. Same thing goes for overall plugin settings, overarching plugin settings. You may not want them to have access to that, or you may. So the idea behind the producer user type is that we will be able to set permissions within the admin on a per user basis for how that producer gets to interact with the software. So I think that's pretty clever. And then the third type of user that we have here is just a user. And I could have called this customer, but I think user makes more generalized sense. So a user is somebody who only can log in to the front end of your website. So if you have ever bought a digital product, you're able to log into certain websites, like a WordPress website. You can log into the site, but you don't get access to the admin. You get access to the front end and like protected pages where you can download whatever you bought. Now an account page where you can manage what your account settings are, that type of thing. So a user is fundamentally different from an administrator or a producer. A user is not going to have access to the admin at all. So right now there's actually well, I guess there's kind of a way to log in as a user, but I'm still going to roll out a new front end login page. They'll be standardized. And this will enable people with a user at level of access to log into the front end of the website where they will go to, like I said, an account page, probably something like that, some minimal pathway for a front end type user. I'm going to go ahead and get that in place, and then plugins that provide, that if a customer buys and they get access to your site, then the plugins that do that will play on that landscape, and then fill out those pages with, okay, here's the information for a user, that kind of thing, and that will all be in the Valet method landscape for plugins. If you're familiar with that stuff. So that's all coming. Another thing that's worth noting here, while I take you on this brief tour, is that this is the user options page. Essentially, it's where you can edit users. When you do this, you will be able to convey with your plugins through a Valet method. You will be able to convey options to this page as well. And there will be a concomitant thing where if you want to convey those options to the front end account page, so users can change certain settings, you will be able to do that as well. So that's a little bit more nuanced than some of the other Valet methods for options, but user management happens on two sides, can happen on two sides, at least for people with user level of access. So that is coming, and I think that will probably be the last main type of options that plugins are going to be able to tap into. I can't really think of anything else that's even relevant on the site. So essentially that will cover all the bases. So that's coming, that's happening, that's cool. I also, this is worth noting for my peeps. So I built in some better error handling and feedback into this UI that I'm going to need to extend to other UIs as well, ultimately. But so for example, let's say we go to create a new user here and we just save the user and there's no data. It's going to say, well, username not provided. So we'll do this. We'll say it's Max. Well, usernames have to be 4 characters long. So that's not going to work. So let's do this. Well, we don't have an email. So now we do that. And we make the user type a user. Now we'll go for this. And it says, well, there's no password. So now we have to input a password. But we're going to make those not match. Well, the passwords don't match. Okay, well, let's try it again. That's seven character password. Well, passwords must be at least 8 characters. Dang it. So there we go. This should work. Okay, there we go. We got a new user. And so the UI actually updates. It said create user up here, create new user. And this said create new user. And there was no delete user option. Well, after you save a new user, it fills out the rest of the interface with it refines the interface and fills it out with the rest of the stuff you would need to do just typical user management. I think it's a pretty good little system there. I like the feedback. So there you go. And then you go back to your user management. You see your new user. You got this, you got that, you've got the other. So there you go. That is the stuff I've been working on all week. It's shameful that I can, show you guys this in just a couple minutes. The amount of work that went into this was tremendous. There's actually hundreds of lines of code behind this. Usually things don't take as much effort as this did, but like I said, there's a lot of nuance to user handling. And I also built in a lot of interesting feedback. And I want to make sure everything that taps into the user system is all using the same methods and everything. So it's really efficient and everything goes through this exact same bottlenecks and choke points. So it's really good and really tight. I really like what I have here, but it was a hard-won battle. Okay, and I've still got the delete. I think, yeah, the delete works, but I still want to tidy up some stuff, and there's some other little things I need to get in here. So like, if you have a username, if you input a username, I need to make sure it's all lowercase, and I also need to protect against duplicates. So there's some work left to be done, but the bones are in place. It's looking good. All right. So let's flip back over to stop sharing. You guys can look at me for a second. All right. So, but the big conversation I want to have today is about design systems, because this is fascinating me. So what is a design system? So a design system is something that was really pioneered by Apple. I mean, they're not like the genesis of the idea or anything, but they really popularized this and they did it the best, the earliest. So Apple instituted a design system that works something like this. Apple has a bunch of products. They have different teams working on rollouts and promotional stuff, web pages, ads, all this stuff for their products. And in order to maintain brand continuity across these different teams and different product offerings, they establish a design system that says things like, here's the font we use, or fonts. Here's the fonts we use. Here's the colors we use. Here's the button style we use in our UIs. If you have a button, it does this. Oh, and by the way, if there's a buy button, the buy button gets treated differently. And here's what's different about it. Here's how we treat that. And this goes even deeper into like, okay, well, if we have like a card style output, here's the basis for our cards. Here's the stuff we do. Here's the options that you have with this. You don't have to present a card exactly like this. You can do it a little bit differently. Here's the options that you have. So it defines all of those things. Their design system defines the methodologies, even down to the syntax, like within the code, the syntax that you'll be using, and the whole bit. And that way, if design or implementation is passed from one team to another, it's very easy to diagnose quickly. Someone who's versed in the design system, but not in that department, can go into a project from another department and quickly figure out what's going on and say, okay, I see this, this, and this. And also you can identify differences and problems very quickly that way. So this was a survival mechanism for Apple initially, a survival and also like a brand reinforcement thing that they had to do to make sure that they were getting consistent output across their different departments. And it's a really smart thing to do. Now, they've been doing this for years. But it hasn't really caught fire with a lot of other companies until the last few years. And it has really gone into overdrive recently with AI. AI is sending this into overdrive. And the reason why is because if you have a proper design system and you have an LLM that is seeded with your design system, suddenly you can do rapid prototyping that has really accurate, like brand specific output. You can do that rapid prototyping, with extreme speed. You can test out a lot of cases that you could not before. And this enables these companies to bypass the big communications bottlenecks that occur within these teams, so that there's designers on a team and there's developers on a team. So much time gets wasted on this communication back and forth between designers and developers, trying to make sure that things are done consistently. There's a lot of wasted energy there, not just at Apple. I'm sure they dealt with this. I'm sure they've done a pretty good job of like smoothing that stuff out. But at these other companies that are trying to play catch up, this is a continual nightmare, and it wastes a ton of resources. Now, obviously these companies are now in an arms race to smooth out these things and get rid of these time wasting functions that they deal with by replacing a lot of that process with AI. Now they got a guy generating prompts saying, all right, we need creatives for this new product. Show me the prototypes for the print ads. Show me the prototypes for the UI pages that we're going to be putting up on the website to advertise this. Maybe ads, the ads that we're going to be serving through Google and putting on there, that kind of thing. Like the whole spectrum of creatives that they do, they want to have this, they want to be speaking this unified design language through their design system. But now AI is enabling them to hit all of the creatives at once in this very consistent way. So they are all racing to do this. But what I've discovered here in the past couple of weeks is that they're not very good at this. They're not very good at this. And so they're all kind of contracting out with these third-party companies now that are doing this. So these third-party companies specialize in developing a design system and implementing a design system for these big companies. And the people who do this are making a ton of money. It's wild. Because, they're working with big brands. So we're talking six-figure deals and up. And so what they do is they establish the basics. So here's the fonts, here's the colors, here's the sizing, all this stuff. Here's the way we do our cards, here's the options, all that stuff I mentioned before. But then they're adding a procedural layer of saying, when we do this, here's how we do it, and we roll this out. And then also adding that LLM training and leaving and this gets as much into the details as okay, so I'll show you a PageMotor equivalent. PageMotor, we have there's buttons. There's basic button styles in the admin. This is a design system. There's 6 or 7 button styles that are unique to the admin, and this blue one is an action button. This one's like a UI alternate button. This one's a UI button. This one's another one, another type. I'm not sure exactly what's what. This may be a default button. This is a UI alternate button. Whatever. But this is what the companies that are rolling out these design systems, this is what they do. They specify, all right, if you have this kind of button, this is how you do it. And then they go through and try to make sure that everybody who's implementing this stuff across their various UIs is using this precise language. And then they can develop, documentation essentially that everyone in the company can refer to say, okay, if we're doing this, this is what we're going to do. And the goal is consistent implementation across various departments, across various creatives, the whole bit. It's really saving these companies a ton of money when they do this. And it makes, like I said, it makes outcomes better. It's exactly what we're trying to do with PageMotor. It's just expressed in the language of design and in a different context, really. But what I find most fascinating about this is that this is coming in vogue now because of the AI arms race. People are finally coming around to something that I've been keen to forever, and that is these design systems and the need for such design systems. And so in late 2011, I introduced golden ratio typography to the world. And the idea with golden ratio typography is to serve as the foundation for a design system, but specifically a web-based one. But it's technically applicable anywhere you find text. So with golden ratio typography, which I'll just say GRT, I'm on the golden ratio typography calculator website, grtcalculator.com here. You can input, I chose content width of 644 pixels. So you can play with those inputs yourself if you want to do this. And what this spits out, it tells you what your basics are. It says, all right, here's the font you're using, here's the font size, here's the line height that we will be using based on the content width you have specified. And that's all calculated based on the golden ratio. And then it also tells you how many characters per line you can expect to get in your 644 pixels wide of text. Then it provides a typographic scale. This is 6 values, 6 sizing values. It's font size and associated line height that you should use in your content based on the other settings that you have input. The canonical size here is 18, and the canonical line height is 30 pixels. But these other sizes, there's 1 size smaller and 4 sizes that are larger. These are the other font sizes and line heights that go with, they match your canonical font size, and it's all calculated based on the golden ratio. And then you have one more aspect of this, which is the spacing values that you should use in your design or in your design system. So we're not just having willy-nilly font sizes and line heights here. We're having 6 total to choose from. We choose what we convey, what we're going to use in this particular situation. And spacing units, we have 6 core spacing units, and we're also picking from this. We're not just like, oh, here's my element. I'm going to put 10 pixels of margin underneath this. Like, that is an arbitrary distinction. We're not going to do that. We are going to choose a value from the design system. In this case, this is the 4th spacing unit. We're going to do, I call it X4 for short. We're going to do X4. That's how much spacing we're going to put under this. And if you do it that way, if you implement a design system like this, you have the ability to change things in the future. I'm using X4 here, not really even 12 pixels. It's 12 pixels within this context. But if I use X4 to represent this spacing in my designs, and I change the font size or the width, the content width that I'm working with, and these values actually change a little bit, then those values will change as well. And the proportionality will always remain the same. So the actual pixel values themselves will change a little bit, but the proportionality will remain the same. And that is super, super critical. Again, it goes back to this idea of rapid prototyping. But I'll demonstrate this with PageMotor. So we can go back to PageMotor here. We'll go view our site. I'll share this tab. All right. So here is the basic the PageMotor homepage when you install PageMotor on your site. And this is using size 18 font. It's using a font called IBM Plex Sans, which is the body copy, and IBM Plex Serif for headlines. But again, the canonical size is 18 pixels. The base content width is 644 pixels, just like I input in the GRT calculator a moment ago. Now, all the sizing and spacing here in this layout is set based on the GRT principles I just showed you. So like the spacing is like X4, X6, X1, X2, it's whatever it is. The sizing is the canonical size is F5, but this one here is F1. This one here is probably F2. This one's F2. I don't know if there's another one. And this one's F6, the smallest size. So because it's all defined that way, if I go into the admin and go and change the design options, we'll make the font size 20 pixels instead. Now we go in and save it. Going to go back over here and refresh the page. Now everything's bigger. But you notice, like, the way that increased, all the proportionality remained the same. If I had defined all these margins and padding values in terms of raw pixel numbers, they would not have changed proportionally when I changed the font size. So you see, and the implications of this are that hundreds of values in the CSS for this website changed when I changed that font size. So that is an example of super rapid prototyping with a design system. It's amazing stuff. Just the power that gets harnessed there. So going back to the larger design system discussion, how does PageMotor fit into that? Well, PageMotor, I've been ready for this for years. So PageMotor is already ready to be super rapidly prototyped using a design system. And you as the front end user, so I showed you the admin. The admin has buttons, buttons that are relevant to it. The front end, your actual theme that you'll be playing with for your front end output, has similar stuff. It's got buttons. It's got these things called callouts. It's got a billion other things with the text, different text elements that you can use in your content. These are the canonical text elements for PageMotor. Another way of expressing that might be that any theme that works with PageMotor should support these basic canonical elements. And it should also operate, you should honor the design system and work in a similar way so that this rapid prototyping is available to users. And it's not just about conveying that to users at this point. It's actually about making sure this stuff's going to work well with AI so that when we start doing the really cool stuff like rapid prototyping entire websites with unique functionality by using AI, that this other stuff all changes as well. And that is coming, gang. That is coming. We're going to be able to tell an LLM, hey, spool me up a PageMotor website that does info product-based e-commerce and has an account area where people can download my white paper PDFs, and that has these core branding colors, that uses this font, and spool it up in there, and then let me play with the fonts and font sizes and stuff like that, and I can go tweak the colors from there. Like, that is going to happen very soon. Like, certainly within the next year. I think within the next 6 months, we're going to see some stuff like that. It's going to be crazy. Okay, so we got some questions in the chat. I'm going to read these real quick to catch up. I think that's probably Casey up there. He says, are users primarily for gated type content? Yes. It's not for the editors or creators. The user type is for the front end only. Let's see. Sean says he remembers the day GRT was published on Personify. That would have been like November or maybe December. I think November of 2011. That is going way back. Casey says, why 644 is the content width? I'm curious how you settled on that. That's a good question. Going to roll back over here real quick before resuming the discussion. So let's leave that out. Let's see what the GRT thing suggests. So it suggests 612 is the perfect content width for the Apple system font, which is San Francisco, at size 18. And it says the associated line height with that is going to be 30 pixels. So it says 612 is perfect. When I have messed with actual designs and also from user feedback, people seem to like their content area to be a little wider. I don't remember the exact specifics, but at some point with Focus, or maybe even before that, with just regular thesis skins, I settled on 644, and there had been a lot of images created by people using the software that were exactly 644 pixels wide. So for continuity and stuff like that, you don't want to make it any wider than that, because if it's wider than that, but your image is only 644 pixels wide, you've got this weird little gap out to the right of your images if you're just switching from one platform to another. So I have maintained that continuity. But like I said, also when I've surveyed people and they seem to like a little bit wider better than the 612, it seems a little too tight. So the precise, so what this content width that the GRT calculator spits out, if you don't input a content width, all you put is a font and a font size. It says, okay, what is the exact line width at which the line height is golden, meaning the precisely calculated line height divided by the font size equals the golden ratio. So that all that's saying is that's that point. What that really is, that point that it identifies, it serves as the fulcrum or tuning point for the rest of the sizes. So if you make your line height wider, then if you make your line width wider, then the line height that works with that's still golden, is actually going to be greater than the golden ratio. And if your content width is less than 612 here, then your resulting line height is going to be a little less than the golden ratio. So it's just a little bit of nuance of how the GRT. Oh, I was showing it on here and not actually showing you guys. So yeah, so see, here's the 6. So if you enter just a font size and not a content width, it's going to show you what the golden line width is. And if your content width is wider than that, then your resulting line heights are going to be a little greater than the golden ratio. And if your content width is narrower than this, the resulting line heights will be less than the golden ratio. The line height ratio is just the line height divided by the font size. Now, browsers use integers to define this. The actual calculations in the back end use very precise numbers, but we have to round on internet. So it ultimately is a somewhat imprecise game, but what this does is it says, here's the best you can do with internet, go to town. So like if so the line height right now is 30, the content width of 612, let's make the content width 700. And now it says the appropriate line height for this width is 31 pixels. So it went up a little bit, like I said. So it increases to maintain that proportionality. The reason why it does that, quick little extra info, is that the wider a line of text is, the more room you need in between lines to ensure that there are no what's called a return sweep error. So when you read to the end of a line, if the lines of text are too close to one another, your eyes will jump to the same line or to the next line, to essentially to the wrong line of text. But if we maintain a golden proportion that is scaled based on the width of the text, if we maintain a golden proportion there, the thinking is that it should minimize return sweep errors, making your reading more accurate, faster, and more pleasurable. So that's the overshare on that. So we'll go back to the design options here. Let's see if we got any more questions. There we go. All right. So anyway, the PageMotor is totally set up. Back to the larger design system discussion. PageMotor has a design system in place, a very sophisticated one at this point that's been in use for many years and refined for many years. And it is ready for rapid prototyping. And, I want these agencies that are doing this design system implementation for companies to get keen on the PageMotor architecture, because then they will be pushing this on the companies they are advising. Like, everyone really should be using this on that basis. If you have a design system, you want to be working with a tool like this that's for rolling out UIs and stuff like that. You want to be working with a tool that enables you to use that design system. And these things can be extended. This is not in PageMotor yet, but it's coming. So this is a theme. Themes are going to have skins. And here's the big idea. So I actually meant to make this a topic, and I didn't put it on the rubric for the week. But this is a larger topic that I want you guys to be paying attention to and aware of. And that is this idea of one theme to rule them all. If this theme, the attention theme, for example, has this design system built in, which it does, then using a different theme that doesn't have that would be giving up the farm. You're giving up everything. You're giving up basically the golden value here. So it would be really, really unwise to do that. You don't want to give up the design system that's in here, I promise, for rapid prototyping capabilities and all that other stuff, and just for general management. The documentation on this eventually is going to be so good. The LLMs trained on this is going to be so good. Like, there's just so many benefits down the road. We want to be using this theme, I promise. But the idea behind the skins is that you'll be able to remix the way this theme works and like season it to taste. So you can fiddle with some templates or the general HTML output and kind of change the way that is. If you want a site that has a corporate logo on the left and a nav out to the right, there'll be a skin to do that, or like with a big footer, with the 4-column footer that you commonly see, where like one column is like about us, meet the team, contact, all that other stuff, address, whatever, another logo in the bottom. You've seen this stuff. Those are great candidates for skins for themes. And what those skins will be able to do is extend design options as well, and indeed other options available to the themes. And the themes ultimately have control over just about everything in the software. So the potential here is really huge. But the bottom line is, so Apple, for example, to go back to their design system, Apple could take this, the attention theme, build a skin for it, and then build in their specific UI components that go beyond the basic content elements and form elements and stuff like that are defined in here. And they could add their own, and then they would be able to select what the options are for that. The operators for Apple, and they'd be able to roll that stuff out across their different UIs. So skinning is coming. You'll be able to pick your theme, and then you will be able to pick a skin eventually. Like maybe you like your business remix skin or whatever, and that's how you do it. And maybe it even has the exact same options. It's just a slightly different. The difference is only in the basic templates and the way that stuff works out of the box. Or the difference could be here in the design options. Like I said, it's not limited to any one area. A skin can create as many differences from the base theme as it wants, or it can just have a couple of differences. But the idea is that everyone who uses PageMotor can roll out a theme that is very specific to their design system. So you're not stuck with what's in here. It's always going to be extensible so that it will be applicable in any scenario, any output scenario. So that's really powerful. That looks really good to me. The future promise there with the design system. I'm really liking that. So that's how PageMotor fits into the design system equation. Can't sleep on this. This is going to be huge. It's already huge, like I said, with a lot of these companies doing this arms race to try and build up their design systems and leverage AI. As we know, PageMotor is already kind of built to leverage AI, and I wanted to share how the theme architecture and the design stuff and the stuff that's already in the theme, like the CSS variables, the SCSS output, the include files, the mix-ins, the way all that stuff works, the way these options work, even down to, I'll show you the variables here. Within custom CSS, it's real easy to view the variables that are, so these variables are all values from the design system. And you can just deploy these in your custom CSS if you want. Or like I said, this is just a handy way to kind of view what they are and what their current values are. But, eventually I'll be documenting this. And, I really think here's the core values in this design system, the core values, and then there's extended values. But like we have media breakpoints for responsive queries. We have a couple of background colors. We have 3 border styles. We have 2 types of text colors. And then we have a link text color. So you have your primary text, accent text, and then a link color. Then we have our 6 primary font sizes, F1 through F6. We have a code font. So there's your primary font, a secondary font, and a code font. So here's the code font. Here's font 1. Here's font 2. Font 1's primary font. Font 2's secondary font. Then you have your G1 through G6 values. These are the golden line heights. That's where they're prefixed with G. I don't want to do H because that might be confused with H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6 elements in HTML. So therefore I went with G, but these are the golden line heights. These correspond. If you're using F1 font size, you also want to be using the G1 line height. Now I'm saying if you're using that, you want to be using this. The reality is the theme already does all this. It's already set all this up for you, so you don't have to do this. But if you're doing something super custom, and trying to define, these values for yourself, these are the things you want to use. You want to pick from the design system palette that's already there. Some more values are gutter for full width displays, like full screens, and gutter for mobile devices. That's the gutters are the dead areas on the left and right sides of the screen. You don't want text going all the way to the edge of the screen on a mobile device. That's really unsightly. So we have a gutter there that preserves the integrity of the layout. There's also a gutter on larger screens. It's just a larger sized gutter. We have a quick reference for the golden ratio if you want to do any calculating to maintain proportionality. I've only used that a couple times ever, and it's been there for like 12 or 13 years. So I don't know how useful it is, but it's in there just to a reminder of the basis for a lot of these calculations. Then we've got the width of content. That's like anywhere you want to convey text, you'd want to constrain it to this width. You never really want width going across the full screen of the browser. I should have mentioned that with the golden ratio typography discussion. I'll flip back over there real quick. So we always constrain the text to a readable width, which is kind of open-ended. It's a little bit arbitrary. But here's the reality. When lines of text get longer to read, people see it as being more difficult. It's interesting because in practice, if you were to test people's reading speed, the fastest reading speed would be on a never-ending and infinitely wide line of text. People just keep reading left to right. That actually produces the highest reading speeds. But when you ask people what they want to read and how they feel about the way a certain passage of text looks, the wider the column of text, the less they want to read it. It looks more challenging. It looks more challenging. So copywriters know this, and they use little tricks like adding an image at the beginning of a post. Let's see if I can get a good example here. So they'll add an image at the beginning of a web page or blog post or email or something like this. And what they'll do, who knows when the last time I used one of these was? Let's see. Nope. I used to do this all the time. But they will add an image in the top right. Man, I used to do this all the time, and I'm just not seeing any examples for this. Surely I did it here. Okay, here's an example. Thank goodness. So they will put an image up here in the top right, and this causes what's known as a squeeze. A squeeze makes the line of text really short. People love reading this. Hilariously, their reading speed decreases when the lines of text are real short like this, probably because of issues with return sweep errors and also just like the natural time break it takes to go from the end of one line to the beginning of the next. But this is also an attention hack. When people read more slowly, they are also paying more attention. So if you really want people to see something, you introduce a squeeze, maybe add some bold text over here, and they're spending a little more time with that text, really seeing it, and they're more likely to read it because it looks easy to digest. So it's a fascinating phenomenon with reading. But the bottom line of all of that is to suggest that you do not want really freaking long lines of text. Like I've got 1,040 pixels of available width in this layout that you're looking at, but this column of text is 644 pixels wide. A lot of people have this inclination. They just want to fill up all the available horizontal space. It's madness. And what they do is they create a wall of text that nobody wants to read. And it's also unsightly. It's like not an elegant way of doing it. You see this stuff enough, you begin to you recoil in horror at anything that goes across the full width of the page that's text. Image is fine. Big hero sections, all that stuff's fine. Big sections are fine. But a line of text that goes all the way across the layout is not fine. People don't want to read it. It's unsightly. It's a no-go. Anyhow, we'll go back over here. So if you're defining a column of text anywhere in a layout, you want to constrain it to this W content width, the W total. These are all, again, core values in the attention theme design system for PageMotor. The total width of the layout, that's the usable width of the layout. That's like the maximum width of an image or text or anything that doesn't have super special treatment to go edge to edge in the browser. That's going to be 1,040 pixels as this is currently defined. This can be changed in the design options, but this just tells you what the current value is. But if you reference W total, you're always referencing, the widest thing we can do. And then the final values from the core design system are X1 through X6. These are spatial values based on the current design settings. So if you're defining padding, margins, anything like that, you want to use X1 through X6. You do not want to use absolute pixel values because those will not adjust when the user adjusts design settings. So this is how we do it. Trademark. This is how we do it. We use the design system, and this is also the key. Using the design system is the key to giving plugins what they need to be able to have their unique output integrate with a pre-existing theme. That is the key. referencing design elements in all code that, like if your plugin adds SCSS, it needs to be referencing at a minimum the core variable values in the design system to ensure that when that user loads up the page on their website, it's going to have honored all of their existing design settings. So the plugin can guarantee a proper integration with the theme by doing this. It's incredible. This is one of the biggest challenges in all of WordPress is integrating plugins that do specific or introduce specific functionality. And I've just kind of laid out the pathway here for how this is actually going to happen, how it's actually going to work, and it's all because of the design system that exists here. So that is legit. That is legit. I want to take a little detour and talk about something that came up in the PageMotor forums that I referenced earlier, and that is the JSON. JSON is JavaScript object notation, the JSON representation of a PageMotor plugin. And what's even the point of this? What is even the point of this? And I think this is where it is. Here we go. So what is the point of this? And the point of this is, what is a simplified language, like literally reduced to code, that we could speak to various LLMs to say, here's what I want you to build. I want you to make a PageMotor plugin. Here's the stuff it needs to have. And the most consistent way to do that is to feed it code, because there's no other ways to interpret it. If there's one, if it's got the code and it's got this this documentation that says here's how to interpret this code, then there's not going to be any outlying cases like this is how you do it. Okay, so there's something called LLM hallucinations, where people who work with this stuff regularly will be used to getting a certain type of output, but in certain circumstances, they're going to get a different type of output. It's like the thing broke the pattern. And that is going to happen if there's not a very precise input method for the LLMs. So this is one of the keys to leveraging AI, to working with AI, to getting the most out of it, is that you want to, whenever possible, you want to speak a very clear, unmistakably precise language to the LLM. It's beautiful to use prompts and all that, and we'll get to there. There's like a step 2 in the process. Step 1 is seeding that LLM with some data that it cannot screw up. And so this JSON notation for a plugin architecture for PageMotor, this is that unmistakable language that we can speak to LLMs to ensure that Claude, ChatGPT, various other ones, that they interpret this stuff the right way and don't do any of this hallucination. So what this is, so a plugin file for PageMotor, I'm going to pull one over real quick. So a plugin file for PageMotor, I'm going to share this. Let me do this. Let me stop sharing, share. Let's see if we can find it. Of the 8 million windows I have open, can I find this? Oh, it's a window. Here we go. Holy cow. There we go. Got it. Okay. So here's a plugin. This is a rather somewhat complicated one in terms of output, but this thing has a section for file headers. It has a section for it's like a little language for a program called PHP Doc, where you could feed the whole PageMotor architecture, the whole software into PHP Docs, and it can like give you some links and ways to traverse the software, ways to search all the functions in the software, that kind of thing. So it's got this section for PHP Doc. Then it's got a patternized way of declaring what the plugin is. You give the class name and you extend the core PageMotor plugin model. And then you've got a section where you've got properties. And then you've got a bunch of methods. Many of these methods that are going to be mentioned here, many/most, depends on the plugin and what it does, of course, are going to be what's called Valet methods. Valet methods. And Valet methods in PageMotor, as we've covered, are methods that give you access to do the things you want to do with the PageMotor software. You want to introduce some site options in the admin, well, there's a Valet method for that. You want to introduce some box options, so like if somebody deploys an instance of one of your plugins in a template, that they can change the options for just that instance. There's other things as well. I mentioned the user options. If you want to convey options to users, there's a Valet method for that. There's Valet methods for all the things you want to do. Ultimately, there needs to be Valet methods for literally every action you would want to take with the software. So, but this is the actual code, and the LLMs can produce this, but an LLM that has not been properly trained, or maybe not trained with enough data, is going to make some mistakes. It's going to make some mistakes. But if it knows that JSON notation that I mentioned before, and create that more, it can and all that code much more accurately. So like this JSON notation that I've introduced, it references headers. So this is in the create your first PageMotor plugin post on the PageMotor forums. The beta peeps can find it there. But it's got a section to delineate the headers. It's got a section for the properties that are going to be unique to that particular plugin. It's got a Valet method known as a pseudo constructor. It's got a content types method for declaring content types within PageMotor. This is very, very powerful. I've talked about this briefly in some of the other live streams, but this will come up more and more as PageMotor grows, and especially as the plugin ecosystem grows. So an example of something that will use content types is an e-commerce plugin. And an example of one of the content types it might add would be products. Another type of content it could add would be like your active subscriptions. I'm not really sure exactly how that's going to tie in yet. Going to figure all that out down the line, but that's an example of something that might be there. Then we've got options. There's different types of options that plugins can convey, and each type of options conveys somewhere different in the PageMotor UI. And so we could say, so I want options, and then here's the type of options I want. And then an LLM that's properly trained with this says, okay, I know when I see this site parameter underneath options, I know that I need to make a site options method, and that's what I'll output. So like, I'll demonstrate there's theme options. So when it encounters this, it's going to say, oh, I know what I need to do. I need to output this function, this method. Really, it's a method when it lives in a class. It's a function when it lives outside of the class. We don't use functions, we use methods. And I'm going to do public function, theme options, and I'm going to return an array of the options that have provided in that JSON data in here. It's an empty object right now, but it would be populated if this was an actual use case. Got another Valet method, uploader. These are available to you right now, gang. There's fonts Valet methods. There's one method called fonts, and there's another one called Google Fonts that you can use in your code to add fonts to the PageMotor environment. It will add it to the admin theme. It'll add it to the front end theme. It will add those. It will make them available for use, but it won't put them into use unless you select them in the design options UIs. So you can add your own Google fonts. You can add your own core fonts. There is a syntax to that I haven't documented yet. It's the same as the one on DIY themes. If you want to go search for all that stuff, if you're super eager to use some unique fonts. But that stuff's already in there as of 0.2.2. I don't think I even talked about that. Maybe I did. I don't know. There's a preload Valet method. So this is an interesting method that was useful with WordPress. I haven't used it yet with PageMotor, but maybe it will find some use. But certain things you want to do on websites require some processing. So like if a page is going to render, you might want to do some processing before that page renders. And this preload method that's available to plugins says, hey, if this plugin appears on the current template, run what's in this preload method and do that pre-processing. And this will run before the template even begins to render. So you can, if you need to get some stuff ready for when the template actually outputs, this would be the place to do that. So potentially very handy, but because of the way the rest of the PageMotor architecture works, it may not be necessary at all, but it's in there. Another one we have is CSS. Now, there's various functions you can do with CSS. You can add CSS to the theme that will output on every page on the front end. This could be, who knows? It's a ham-fisted way of doing it, but the options there, if you want to do that, you can shove some CSS into every page of the site. We don't really do that. We use an SCSS compilation environment, but again, it's there if you want to do it. And there's certain circumstances where you might need it. The next thing is, so this is an interesting one. I haven't talked about this, but this exists in the PageMotor plugin architecture already. It is a special Valet method to convey custom CSS, your own CSS, like for your plugin, to the site options admin page. So here's what that might look like. We'll go over here. We're going to share this. And the plugin settings. So this is a site. This is site options for the Google Analytics plugin. If this options page did something or needed some styling treatment that is not handled by the basic options handling in PageMotor, you could supply some site options CSS that would only convey on that page for that plugin. And that's your avenue for changing the way that admin looks. It used to be a real pain in the butt to do that with WordPress. But so this has an avenue for that. And we'll revisit this exact scenario in just a moment. And then you also have a method to write CSS. This is a new one that I know Ken Jordan has been playing with. But he was doing it. I introduced a hacky method. This is the actual proper method. It's write_CSS is the actual Valet method name. Then we have a similar thing for SCSS. You can do some mix-ins, add SCSS mix-ins to the overall theme environment. You can add includes, SCSS includes. These are really what I use the most. And then you can also add includes to the editor, the content editor environment. So that would add includes to this. It would add includes to this environment so that you could add specific style handling to the editor if that's what you needed to do. That's crazy. And then we've got one more. It's a write method for that. This is actually the same as the write method for the CSS. Like if you were feeding this to an LLM, it would need to know that this is the same thing. But whether you're writing CSS or SCSS, it goes to a specific location in the user content folder. It's user content /CSS. And the point of that folder is to give plugins a place to write dynamic CSS files that are not going to be overwritten or in danger of being overwritten during updates to PageMotor or to PageMotor plugins. That stuff doesn't even work yet, but the updates don't work yet, but that's preparing for the future. Plugins need a place to write some files that are not going to be jeopardized. This is the place they're going to do it. Then we have some more stuff, JavaScript functions. You can register JavaScript. You can specify which JavaScript this plugin wants to use on pages where it actually appears. And then there's options-based JavaScript. So this is a way to convey custom JavaScript to various admin pages in PageMotor. You can add it to site options, the site options page for that plugin. You can add it to content options. So if this plugin has content options that appear on the current content type, then this JavaScript will appear on that page. Super, super precise. Same thing for theme options, box options, and template options. So that is how, if your plugin needs to augment the existing UIs with certain JavaScript behaviors, this is how you would do that. And there is I'll go back over here and explain this. Let's go. So these are content options, and anything that declares options declares its options using the PageMotor options array format. That supports most types of input, but not all types of input. There are various custom types of input that you might want to have in a very sophisticated options form. And if you were to do that, you can actually supply there's an options type in PageMotor called custom, where you just supply your own HTML for whatever that custom options type is going to be. And PageMotor actually saved the data for your custom options type as well. It does all the handling except for the UI stuff. So you have the ability to add CSS where you need it to handle that custom option, and now also JavaScript to handle that as well. So that is pretty slick. That's really, that's pretty specific for the platform to be doing all that stuff already, but it does. And then you got 3 more Valet methods that appear here at the bottom of this JSON structure. We've got HTML, that's for output of plugins that are declared as boxes. We have container open and container close. These are specific to plugins that are declared as containers instead of boxes. I've talked about this before, just going to do it again real quick. A container is something that appears in your HTML templates that can contain other items. This is a container, this is a container, this is a container, this is a container. And boxes are terminal points of output. They don't contain anything. They just spit out what their thing is. So this box has an HTML method. These containers have container open and container close methods, but no HTML method. So there you go. So, not even sure exactly. So the whole point of that was to discuss the JSON structure that we could potentially use to feed to LLMs to tell it, okay, if you see this, then this is what you need to be generating for the plugin code. So that is a potentially really powerful way, like I said, to normalize the output from these LLMs. So if you train it, like if it knows that, okay, here's the JSON data I can be expecting, and if I see this JSON data, then here's exactly what I do with it, then that is really going to minimize the mistakes that the LLMs make when spitting out, plugin architectures for you. And then there's another level of augmentation that can occur after that, where you say, okay, well, an HTML method and the container open and container close methods include a depth parameter that is used to create tabbing and indentation in the HTML source. Here's how you use that. Famously, last week, I showed you how Ken's EP Forms plugin uses that and is able to do the tabbing correctly. But he said that he's been seeding his models on Thesis box architecture, which has done that for years, and then also the PageMotor stuff just reinforced it. So it's possible and probably likely that his LLM is smarter because it's been trained on the specifics of something like that. But with this JSON model to actual PHP code dynamic that we can set up here for the LLMs, it'd be pretty easy to add like another layer of instructions on top of that says, oh, if you encounter this, here's what you're going to do too. And I think those LLMs would be able to take that and run with it, pretty much do it first time out of the gate and be right from there on out. So that is really cool. That's an interesting thing that happened this week in the forums. I think it makes a lot of sense because, again, we're always looking to leverage AI as much as possible. Because that's exactly where everything is pointing. It's pointing that way with the design systems. It's pointing that way with the code. Although I think the code stuff is really lagging, like industry-wide. I think there's a whole lot of, oh, well, this is going to be possible. I don't like that discussion. With PageMotor, we're talking about what are we doing with this right now? How are we making this work? Here's what we're producing. Like it's real with PageMotor. And I want to continue to push that envelope and really determine like, okay, how does this work the best? How can we get the most out of LLMs and actually have them produce software we can use? That's what we're doing here. So that is super exciting stuff, I think. Let's see what we got here. Support team Rick's Picks, who's in on the chat, asks, what kind of process would it be to move a WP site using Thesis and Focus to PageMotor? Well, that's a big can of worms right now. It totally depends on how you've run your WordPress website. For example, if you've used posts, not just pages, if you've used posts right now, and PageMotor is not going to have support for posts. It's not a blogging platform. Nobody does that anymore. And the implications of that are really huge. There's a whole lot of weight in WordPress because of the whole blogging aspect. So you would have to make the decision, do I want my posts to become pages? So that's decision one there. Let's just say you're okay with that. So you're saying, all right, just take all my posts and pages, wedge them into the PageMotor database as pages. Then, okay, we got your content moved over. But then you got the question of plugins. If you're running a bunch of plugins, you basically just consider that a big zero, all toast. I have not written anything to convert, to import export a WordPress database into PageMotor. It's not that big a deal, but I have done it. And I can see where a lot of people would be like, oh crap, I've been using Yoast SEO forever. I've got a lot of thesis-based SEO data. I want to make sure all that gets conveyed over. Well, the reality is there's not analogs for all of that data. There's not like, if this exists over in WordPress, it doesn't necessarily exist in PageMotor. There is stuff like title tag, basic stuff. Title tag, meta robots, meta description, that kind of thing. But so those data models are not one-to-one correspondence. So that introduces some interesting questions. There's going to be some loss. Maybe you want to stomach that loss. Maybe you don't. And also like, the idiosyncratic stuff, like if you're using Yoast, there's different stuff to move over than if you're using the thesis SEO or also the AIO SEO plugin. And those are idiosyncratic questions too. That's not just WordPress. That's this plugin that does this thing with this data. This data is important to you, presumably. What are you going to do with that? So there's a lot of challenges there with just moving the sites over and keeping all your data. I've got ecom sites, DIYthemes.com. I've got a whole lot of ecom data. Like the reality is I'm probably not moving that stuff over. Here's circumstances where it would make sense. You got a real simple site, just got pages on it and stuff like that. You haven't been using comments. If you're using comments, you're just going to lose them. Oh, well, usually that's not important to people. If it is, you got to stick with WordPress. And there'd even be ways you could build a plugin. Someone's going to build a plugin in the future to port all that stuff over to PageMotor. I'm pretty confident that will happen. But and then you got like with questions about thesis and focus, specifically your design stuff. There's not a one-to-one correspondence between the design data in thesis / focus and the design data in the attention theme for PageMotor. So there's just a lot there. So one of the things that I made very clear to myself that I wanted to do was that I didn't want to drag along any old or broken or mistaken data models into PageMotor just for the sake of accommodating them. So an example of this is the WordPress database model for your content, for posts and pages and custom post types and all that, is very verbose. There's a whole lot of fields in the database, most of which you never use. I made sure that the only fields that exist in the PageMotor content database are the bare minimum that's going to be used by every type of content. So the bare minimum that's ever going to be used by every type of content. There is and WordPress does this too. They call it metadata, but in PageMotor, there's a content database or content table, and then there's content options. This options table is where you can add other things that you might want. So let's say a plugin declares, like the ecom plugin declares a product content type. And you may decide that the content product type needs to have some data that isn't covered by the core content data model. So the core content data model is an ID, which is automatically generated, a timestamp of when it was created, a timestamp of when it was modified, a title, content itself, a slug. So if that content type is URL enabled, it can be referenced. The content type that piece of content belongs to, and a subtype, which is used currently by the PageMotor admin and may be used by other stuff in the future, may not. I don't know. It's possible and maybe probable that the ecom plugin will use the subtype that's in the PageMotor content data model. But anyway, that's all the stuff that's in the PageMotor one. The WordPress one has a ton more fields. So if you're going to move it from one to the other, you're going to lose a bunch of that other data that's there. But the idea is that with PageMotor, again, you use the content options table to augment the base model with anything else that you would ever need. So you're not limited. It's just expressed in a different way, and it doesn't make the core content table super huge and crufty. So anyway, the answer to your question is it's tough and it depends. A WordPress site that relies on has minimal plugin reliance, like no plugins that actually have real data that you've been inputting over time. SEO plugin is an example of a plugin where you are inputting a lot of data over time. So if you minimal reliance on plugins, only using pages or don't care what happens to your posts, you can convert them into pages if you don't care about that, then that is a great candidate. So just an information website, really. But if you're running anything significant like e-com, stuff like that, then it is a much tougher challenge. And so if you're going to, if you want to do e-com but haven't started it yet, maybe wait for PageMotor. That's going to be a great way to do it. Like that's going to be ideal compared to a WordPress environment. But yeah, so that's a tricky question, unfortunately, because the way data has been handled in WordPress and because of the way that PageMotor is simpler in terms of what it supports out of the gate, there's just a lot of things that would need to happen to try and mimic a WordPress website or reproduce it in similar capacity in PageMotor. But obviously some type of conversion is going to be necessary. People are going to want to be moving from one to the other in the future. I get that. But like I said, I think there's, the plugin ecosystem, the mini ecosystem that would have to develop just to move data from WordPress to PageMotor is significant. And that is not a place where any of us will be served by me spending my energies on that too much. I can I'll have something to move your content over, like basic content, and lose a bunch of data. Just like, here's your content. It's going to appear. It appears at yoursite.com on WordPress. You move it to your new site.com on PageMotor, and that content will still be there. Like, I can do that. But beyond that, I'm probably not going to put too much energy into that. Okay. So let's go on. I'm going to do our last topic. I got 2 topics remaining. One of them's a quickie. I want to talk about, so the theme of today's show is really about design. And I want to talk about something I call container design versus content design. And this is, are you guys seeing this window? It looks like you're seeing this window. You're seeing the default PageMotor homepage. Can you confirm that we're seeing this? This thing's behaving differently now. It used to ask me if I wanted to switch my tabs. It seems to be doing the right thing. Oh, I think I'm sharing the window. Oh, that's smarter. That's smarter. Nice. I'll have to do that in the future. Sick. Okay. So container design versus content design. And this is really, really important. This is really, really important because it clarifies, when we say design, we actually are talking about some things that are maybe not super related, like very superficially related, but not like very deeply related. Or, there's just a lot of implications when you say something generalized like design, and it's really clarifying to speak about things like web pages, at least in terms of container design versus content design. So container design is like the containers for your website. Like your website is the content, right? Your website is the content, but the content exists between some containers. So the content starts here, this yellow section, but the container is something like the header above, the nav menu above, could be breadcrumbs here on interior pages, and then the footer below. But what's unique about this page is not that stuff, not the containers. The container content can change, but really what's unique about it is what happens here in the content. This can have a totally different HTML structure from a different page. It can do things that other pages can't do. So each piece of content is unique, relatively speaking. But the outer containers are not, there's a lot less differences with the containers than there are, like if we look at this page versus that page, the containers are going to be pretty similar, maybe identical, but the content, what happens in between the containers is totally different. So if you were to get somebody in the old school parlance, if you were to get somebody to design your website, a significant part of what they do, at least from a branding perspective, is designing your containers. the containers of your website. That is a significant part of what they do. And historically, they've also spent a lot of energy on the content design. But this is tricky, right? It's tricky because someone who owns a website is presumably going to be producing new content, content that did not exist when the designer was first engaged. And ideally, they're going to want to be able to extend a design system to their new content to maintain this overall feel and this overall aesthetic that was established when the designer was brought on to really mostly do the container design. And this goes back to the design system discussion we had earlier. When you're designing content, you want to be pulling from a design system. That way you can ensure the cohesiveness of everything about your design. PageMotor, like the way it all works, it honors this, like the way the template editor works. Like this template editor had a discussion with Sean Davis in the forums this week, and I kind of went into how the idea here is even though you can produce any kind of HTML structure you want, it can be as specific as you want. You could be a madman and have like, every line of HTML defined by a box on here if you want it. You could be that crazy. But that's not the right way to use this. The right way to use this is to see this as your container design. And that it's funny because there's containers in here, containers and boxes, but really what you're doing here, if you're playing around in here, and really you probably shouldn't even be playing around in here, but if you are dealing with the container design of the templates that exist on your website. You're playing with container design. And then when you go over here and edit your content, now when you're in here, you're playing with content design. And the way this currently works is that, if you insert a new paragraph or you insert a headline or heading, whatever, a caption, it is already pulling from your design system. So you don't have to think about that. Like if you insert a button, we're going to make a little link here. We introduce a new button. We're going to turn this into a button. We're going to make it an action button. If we introduce a new button, it's already pulling from the button that's designed that is defined in the design system. This is an action button. Like I said, we could change it. Say, I don't want that one. We're going to do a save button. And now it's this. So it's pulling it. This editor allows me to pull from the existing design system, but I am designing my content. I've put this bleed in here, this full width orange section. I've put another bleed in down here. Another full width section that's kind of orangey red, brick red-ish, something like this. I've got a caption, and the caption gets colored in a way that is complementary to this bleed background section. So when you go through and create a page and format your content, you're really designing the content. And so I'm practicing, in this case, I'm practicing content design and pulling as much as possible from the established design system. But again, going back to the template editor, when I go in there, I am practicing container design. And it's important to sort of recognize the distinction here because it makes a lot of sense. If you were going to have somebody design your website, you could really limit them to just designing your header, nav menu, or breadcrumb trails or whatever, the way that top stuff works. And then your footer, the way your bottom stuff works. And then the rest of the stuff that they're responsible for handing you would just be setting up that design system, which ideally would be conveyed like this through the design options. Like they would set these up, and then you would just be able to use them in the content editor. So now the designer's job is much more clarified and actually a lot simpler. Like maybe they're putting, so like on the actual PageMotor website, I did this, I did a special little thing to put a logo up here. That was the design I did for this. And the logo is clickable and it does this little rotation thing. I've got a little custom nav menu. I obviously haven't done anything here. It's like super minimally equipped, right? But, that's all I had to do. I dealt with the containers. That's really where I put my attention. And I'm just using the default design system that's already there for my content design. But that really clarifies things, right? Like you could really hire a designer and in not too distant future, they'll be either AI is doing this, and again, here's that theme again. But an AI will be able to just do content design for you. It can rip off a bunch of prototypes. Here's what you asked for. Here's your content design. Maybe you have to go into the template editor and make these tweaks that it tells you to make to get the results that it tells you. But like, we're not far from that. And that's rapid prototyping again. So so an LLM could conceivably spit this out. Now, to me, this is still a little too cumbersome, but compared to current working environments, this is a delight. But an LLM could tell you, okay, here's your new container design. Make these little changes in the templates, it'll be done. And then go into your design options and set these values. And boom, you would already have like a whole new color palette, maybe, the fonts, the buttons and stuff that are in play. It could even tell you to add this custom CSS to change the base to work a different way. We would do this before we have skin functionality, but once we have skin functionality, this will be cranked up to overdrive even more. But the bottom line is this clear distinction between container design and content design, like, really sort of reveals exactly what is happening. Exactly what is happening. And then the only thing you have beyond that is the real hardcore stuff, like what Apple does. Apple always has like a very unique kind of thing going on its homepage, right? Depending on what its products are. Like, it's always doing this. It's got these big sections. You got, animated videos. You got they change this stuff all the time. Like, this is the hardcore form of design that you're going to find at a place like Apple. They have teams on this. These teams are using, like I said, design systems. There's a whole bunch of systems in play here. If you just want to go through this, you kind of start to see the patterns. You're like, I see. These are all pulled from their existing design system. Every little thing on here is part of their design system, their current design system, and they update the standards over time. But after the basic container and content design that I've described, like, the only thing that's left is really hardcore design like this. And this is an example of hardcore content design. So to me, I like that, because design has always felt sort of nebulous. Like, I'm going to have somebody do design. Well, what the heck's that exactly going to entail? Well, now we've broken it down into specific parts: content design, container design. And we've even seen how that ties into design systems. And beyond that, we've seen how PageMotor is already equipped with a design system, and it's ready to receive input from LLMs to be able to create these outcomes. It's able to, it's ready to do container design. It's like pre-built for this. It's ready to do content design. It's ready for your design system. It's ready for adaptations of design systems. The only thing beyond that, like I said, is something I talked about on last week's live stream, which would be something like the block-based page builder that sort of works similarly to the template editor, but works with blocks instead of containers and boxes. So blocks are more specific and more complex collections of these things. It doesn't even have to be a collection of these. A block could be, just something else that's a little bit of a different entity. But yeah, I think you get the idea there. And I hope you see the potential and how the PageMotor, the way it's all set up already, is playing into these clarifications and these new ways of operating. And it's also simplifying this formerly nebulous process of design and making it very clear. And when it's very clear and very patternized like this, you should be having the sensor go off in your head at this point. When you hear those words and you see those things, you should be thinking an AI is going to be able to crush at this, because it's the truth. So Sean says, hardcore content design is like designing the app icons and widgets on a smartphone. Yes, very particular branding assets like that. The mobile OS already established the container design. There is a lot of truth to that now. A lot of stuff is downstream from mobile, and there's only so much they can do. So they kind of, okay, here's our constraints, and then we use those constraints and we carry them over into the larger desktop environment. I do think that's pretty much how all the Apple stuff is occurring now. So that's a great point. But they've always done similar stuff to this, even before that mobile was a thing. And they're just pulling from their design system, and they have teams engaging in this really hardcore content design. But I think it's important for a regular person to be able to look at something and say, oh, this is an example of hardcore content design. This would be something you'd be spending a lot of time and energy on, versus you know, we got basic container design and some simple content design that pulls from an existing design system. That's simpler for me. That's something that PageMotor can do. This is well within reach. And the other stuff might be, something I would pay extra for, engage an agency to do that kind of thing. I like it. I like it when it's clear, like, okay, this is what I want to do. Where do I need to look to get the answers I'm looking for? So I like that as a general rule. Okay, so I've got that's really the last thing. So I'm going to go into the last point for today's live stream, and then we'll wrap it up. First of all, you guys got any questions? Go ahead and drop in the chat while I prepare for this last thing. And happy to answer any and all questions you have from this week. If you're not in the beta, if you got questions, go ahead and fire away. I'm here for any and all questions. But all right, so the last thing I'm going to say this week is that the activity with the beta has been so amazing. It's been so amazing. Everyone who's in the forums rocking this stuff has been playing with AI and creating more. Like, you guys have done so much more than I ever imagined already. And it's actually gotten to the point that I'm overwhelmed. Okay, I've not been able to look at everything in detail. I want to look at everything in detail. I want to see what the LLMs are doing. I want to see where they're doing great. I want to see where they're choking. I want to see formatting differences between the output from some of them. Like, I want to know it all. And I'm not at that point right now. I have not caught up with everybody's work. I mean, even doing one of these plugins, like keeping up with Ken's EP Forms plugin right now is a big challenge. But I want to be able to go over all those. And the reality is, so much is being cranked out so fast that I cannot do that. And like this week, I had to work on the user system, and that literally took my entire week. I'm terrible about this. I'm terrible at multitasking and that sort of thing. So if I'm locked in on one thing, I'm only locked in on that one thing. I don't want to be doing other stuff. And so I don't mode switch very well in that regard. I didn't even do marketing this week. I was supposed to get an email out for the live stream on Monday. I didn't send it till Thursday night. So bottom line is, I've got so much to do with the core, continuing to develop the core, and I want to be looking over this plugin landscape in detail. So because of all that activity and because of how this is moving right now, I've decided I'm going to close the first round of the PageMotor beta in 1 week. I'm going to give everybody 1 more week who wants to get in there, who wants to get out in front of these AI trends, who wants to start playing with these things right now and actually building real software. Like, this is not, I've referenced this a few times now this week and last week, but like, what people are building with these plugins and AI right now, this is not prospective stuff. This is not like, oh, this is like proof of concept. We'll be able to do this with AI at some point in the future. A lot of the tutorials and stuff I've seen, a lot of the examples I've seen, I'd say a vast majority of the things I've seen out in the wild, and people posting on social media, oh, look at this cool thing I built with AI. It's a standalone thing. It doesn't fit into a larger architecture. Like, it's something that if I just put this up on a server, I can just run this. But it's way more powerful if it runs with something like PageMotor. Like, oh, suddenly now it's part of your website. This is part of your potential customer flow. This is part of your business. Whereas some one-off thing that could just run on this server, if I just load this up, that's not really that useful. It's a proof of concept, and it can be fascinating, but that's not that useful. Something becomes software when it becomes useful in some way, and it has actual utility beyond just proof of concept. And so what everyone's been doing in the PageMotor forums in the beta, they have been building actual software. This is no joke. And that is remarkable. That's amazing. And so if you want to build actual software with AI, this is where it's happening. You need to be part of the PageMotor beta. You can get in there. You can learn from the wisdom of others and from the experience of others. I can't believe the detailed discussions that have been happening, and like the amount of knowledge that's in there right now is remarkable. You're seeing not just like exactly what people are doing with AI, their experience with AI, how it was seeded, this and that. Like, you're getting that information. You're getting information about how they're handling all the information around what they're building. You're getting insights into other nuances. Like, we branch into other discussions, such as like recently with SMTP stuff, which is a topic I should have got to this week. We'll probably talk about that next week. But like sending email from your website, transactional email, stuff like that, how all that works. There's so much to it. Like, if you are in development in any capacity, what's happening in the PageMotor forums is totally invaluable. Like, you are getting to see a lot of different facets of this big diamond. And, I think anyone who goes through this experience is going to come out way richer, just in terms of what they know, what they're able to do, understanding certain scenarios like, oh, this fails in this case, or this failed because. Like, these are the things that real engineers, real architects, stuff they need to know. And this is how you learn it. You learn it by doing it. And the doing is happening in the PageMotor forums with the PageMotor beta. So anyway, long story short, I'm killing the beta in a week because I'm overwhelmed. I'd love to get more people in there. If you want to come in there, you can add to the pile of stuff that I need to get through, and that's great. I welcome you. Anyone who's enthusiastic about building, you're going to find a nice home here. So I want you in there if you want to be in there. But again, I got to close it in a week because things are getting out of hand. It's going so well that I got to stop this thing for now and focus on building out the core platform, extending the functionality of these plugins that they need to do remarkable things, and nailing down this AI landscape, which honestly grew out of hand much faster than I anticipated. I think that's the most exciting thing about the whole project right now. And I want to tend that garden. But that's the deal. So you got 1 week. Next Friday, I'm going to kill it. I'll be sending out emails about this. If you're on the PageMotor email list, I'm going to share my screen one last time to get you over to that. So if you go to PageMotor.com, you click on email list, you get on that email list. Put your address in there. You'll be on the email list. I will send you emails over the next week about the beta closing. You can figure out all the information you need. If you don't want to wait, you just click on the beta link at the top. Here's the page about the beta. It doesn't have any testimonials or anything on there. I should be, maybe I'll take the time this week and load it up with a bunch of testimonials from people in the beta and in the forums. But bottom line is they're loving it. They're building amazing things. What's happening over there is remarkable. There's not too many periods on the internet in the last 20 years that I can recall where like the energies coalesce like this, and like, people are really building the future and really being excited about it. There was a similar feeling about WordPress stuff between 2006 to 2009. There was an upswell with themes and plugins and designers and all that stuff. That was similar, but like this feels way more powerful, explosive comparatively. So I'm just saying, I've been around for a long time. You don't see too many scenarios like this where it's all coming together. That is happening now with the PageMotor beta. So you got 1 week left to get in. If that's your thing, come join us. Last thing, Ken has had a couple comments. Let's read what he says. Would you consider adding a method to the plugin model that programmatically exposes available Valet methods and their expected signatures? That is an interesting thing to think about. I will need to give that some thought. Like, what I'm immediately reminded of is that in the thesis architecture, I built in something called hook sniffing, where you could see, like, you could go to any output page, any page, and look at the output, and it would show you where hook locations were, so that you could hook in your content and have it output right there. PageMotor works a little differently, so I'm not sure what's possible there, but I'll be giving that some thought over the weekend. We'll see what's possible there. Ken says he thinks it could help standardize plugin development across different LLMs and reduce inconsistencies. I agree. And I also kind of mentioned something last week that I did not deliver that I need to deliver this weekend. And that is, I need to list the files in PageMotor, the files and objects that are really being used by plugin Valet methods, plugin and theme. Themes have Valet methods too. So I'm going to clarify that landscape for everybody, and these will be interesting things to feed to LLMs, essential things. And I think that's going to clean up some of the outlying mistakes that have happened, or it's going to help. It's going to help a little bit in that direction. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be really important that everybody kind of understands, oh, okay, if I'm doing this, then these are the things. And there's quite a bit there to do, but it's going to be a very valuable documentation page. It's got to happen sooner or later. So let's go with sooner. And there we go. Casey says one more thing. Are you going to continue to support and update Focus with Thesis? Yes. Focus is, and Thesis more generally, but Focus is, I think it is the most advanced thing that's ever been built on the WordPress platform. It's the most mature piece of software. Like when WordPress updates and causes problems, I have to move very little. Usually a lot of plugins are having to move and dance every time WordPress does an update. I do not have to do that. It is a very mature piece of software. It is very good considering WordPress, or by those standards. It's hard to look at after being with PageMotor, but that's beside the point. The point is Focus and Thesis work amazingly well. Focus is extremely well equipped now, especially with the full page creation that I introduced in May of this year. So that's a very recent update. Obviously, any changes that happen like with PHP or whatever, if I need to change some things in there to ensure to keep it working, certainly going to do that. That's like the minimum level of stuff I'm going to do. But I also want to continue to introduce new functionality as it makes sense, and I will continue to do that. So yeah, I'm not just dropping Focus and Thesis forever. It's not like that. But I do want the audience to understand in a way that's not threatening to them that what is happening with PageMotor is it's stepping into the future. And when you really step into the future, you no longer want to tend the gardens of the past in the same way. I will make sure the garden is still beautiful, but I think it would be goofy to expect some crazy level of innovation to happen there. But if you're really honest and you look at the whole WordPress ecosystem at large, there isn't real innovation happening anywhere. There is tortured innovation attempting to, it's trying to happen with the block editor, but it's a nightmare. So like really WordPress has fumbled the bag. They fumbled the bag hard. There's not been any innovation or excitement for many years now. No real innovation. No game-changing stuff. Now they're fumbling the bag hard with this block editor, and people are trying to wedge AI into this whole equation, and it's not built for it. That's what I need people to understand. Like WordPress is not built for the future. I understand. Like I've got websites that are on WordPress that are not going to be able to be taken off of that, really. Like I'd have to rebuild the GRT calculator and move all my processing over to a new ecom plugin that I build for PageMotor if I'm ever going to do that one. And I'm not eager to do that. I've got DIYthemes.com, which runs on easy digital downloads for ecom. Like that's not getting moved over. It's not. I'm stuck on WordPress on those sites, and that's the reality. But I'm not living in the past here either. Like I'm moving ahead, and any new stuff I'm going to build is going to be on PageMotor. And that's the way it needs to be. But like I said, I've got assets that I have to maintain. So if this gives you some measure of security, know that I have stuff that I need to continue to run on WordPress. There's nothing I can do about it. So it's going to continue to run on WordPress. So just for me, I have to maintain that. But guys, I've got lots of customers who are running WordPress sites that depend on my software. Like that is a much bigger motivator than keeping my own stuff alive. So I'm going to take care of everybody. No worries there. But am I excited about WordPress? Am I innovating for WordPress? No. I actually, the truest answer is I guess I kind of am innovating for WordPress. I just rolled out full page creation and Focus this year. So it is kind of sort of happening. But by my standards of innovation and progress and all that, I'm not really. But I have a lot of good ideas, and I'm able to implement some of them for the WordPress crowd as well. And that's great. And actually, my continued work on PageMotor is why I was able to do the full page creation for Focus. So because I'm doing so much with PageMotor and it's new territory, the likelihood of me having some really good ideas that I'm going to be able to carry over to WordPress and Focus, that likelihood is really high. So maybe there's really good news there. Let's see. Casey says he wants to try his hand with some theme skinning. Yeah, me too, gang. That's going to be a big one. That's a little bit down the line, though. I've got to get this core architecture in place, and then I can fiddle with the augmentation layer that represents. But that's going to be critical for really blowing this thing up. That's going to be huge. Sean says he might want to fiddle with Focus to help catch up with PageMotor. Yeah, so Focus has some pretty cool stuff with the with modular content. It's actually implemented in a way that is not fully with PageMotor yet. And also, it's got the Focus content styles, which you have available in the editor. I recommend using the classic editor if you're going to fool with that. But what you can do with a Focus powered site is incredible. So if you run Focus and you want to run something like MemberPress, I have a Focus MemberPress plugin. It's actually a box that runs on Thesis that integrates the two and sets you up for an actual integration with the design. So it's not this So it's not this stark UI difference when you go to a MemberPress page or your front end of your website page. And what I found is that the library of code that you need to like do an integration, for example, with Focus, it's way smaller than you'd have like a naked WordPress and some other theme, maybe Generate Press or something that everybody talks about. Way smaller library of custom code. And it's way clearer like when and where and how to do things, which is nice. But the reality is you still got to figure all that crap out. But like I said, I've got a plugin for that. And maybe, so I don't sell that plugin. I haven't given it out. It's got no documentation, but maybe I'll consider giving that out to beta people, to PageMotor beta people. If you're in the PageMotor beta and you get Focus and you're interested in this, maybe I'll give you that Focus MemberPress plugin to fiddle with. It's really valuable for implementations. I'm just saying, I take something that other people charge $12,000 and up for, and I can do it for about $6,000. If I were to actually do that, I'm not going to do that, but I can do it for a lot cheaper, a lot faster, a lot better. And I've got a few examples of this if somebody's interested in seeing those. But it is what it is. Ken says, an advertisement for joining the forum. Members aren't just solving their own challenges. They're documenting their processes, sharing both failures and successes, and building upon each other's work. Absolutely. And I think that's going to be augmented as in the week ahead as we start fiddling with that JSON model for feeding, like here's what I want from a plugin, with feeding that to AI. That's going to be to LLMs. That's going to be cool. Ken also goes on to say, it's rare to find a community where technical expertise is matched by generosity of spirit. I would agree with that too. It's all happening there. It's really legit. The knowledge exchange happening here, from advanced prompt engineering techniques to innovative plugin solutions, it exemplifies the best of what a developer community can be. Couldn't agree more. I've been blown away. Like I said, the whole thing's just been amazing. It's been amazing. You guys make it what it is. You guys have just been awesome sharing stuff. That's another thing that I don't mention. I need to put this on the PageMotor beta page. But people are sharing their stuff. Like, this is probably going to be charged for later, but everybody's getting access to it in the beta, getting to be a part of the development and testing experience, getting access. Like I said, you're getting the early access, but kind of for free because you're on the club. That's really cool. I didn't say, oh, here's what we're going to do. We should do it this way. No, I didn't say it. It's just organically emerged from the people who are there and from what's going on. So I'm just saying, if you're interested in the future development, want to be a part of that at all, this is the place to be. Just saying. All right. I'm going to wrap it up with that. My boy has a little performance today. I got to go catch. Got to go see a 4-year-old doing a choreographed thing. So that's my afternoon, gang. All right. Thanks for being here this week. Thanks for watching PageMotor live stream week 2. Can't wait to go into next week. Don't know what's going to happen, but great stuff's happening every week. And I'll have new surprises for you then. All right. See you, gang. Thanks for watching.